we've had people writing in since Sunday saying that the time change, and I was just mentioning that the time change, I'm a little befuddled, confused, and don't know what's going on, and my timing is all off this week. And everybody else has been saying that too.
Right.
And they see a difference in their children, they see a difference in themselves. I can't help but think, if changing 1 hour is so confusing for all of us, what must happen for our kids on the spectrum?
Right, that's true, of course. And I think it could also be even worse for our kids because to begin with, so many children have a hard time with sleep. So that 1 hour might be actually pretty important for some of our kids. And I think it's a reminder how important it is to pay attention to whether or not our kids are sleeping adequately.
Okay, really important to do. But I want to get to some questions that we have had written in this morning and over the night. And again, you can be writing these in on our live feature, autism-live.com. And you can also write in on the Facebook as well. But this question, I think, really hits at home. My child, 2.5, nonverbal, was just diagnosed last Friday with ASD. I'm hopeful, but overwhelmed. Where do I start? Diet, doctor, ABA, what comes first? I feel like there is no margin for error. Help.
Right. Well, you're very, very blessed in that we're talking and your child's just 2.5. So this is a perfect opportunity for you to do the things that you need to do. And there's quite a lot of different things that you should be looking into. I don't know where you reside. We don't have that, right?
We don't have that.
So I would suggest that you will need to do a variety of things, and I'm not sure in which order because that really has to do with what you have available to you in your local area. So you're going to be looking for a medical doctor, and I think they're the organization that currently provides some training to medical doctors, MAPS, can perhaps give you some guidance on where to look for those people. And you will also be looking for an ABA professional, so someone who is board certified in behavior analysis. And we just launched, by the way, I'd like to mention our new site, or a new site has been launched called Love My Provider, and there we're giving a lot of help referrals. But it's still local to the Los Angeles area, so I don't really know where this family is. I would start, the best place I think to search for a good ABA provider is, you can certainly look on the BACB organization website, which is bacb.org, but there you'll find thousands of names and not necessarily anything other than that. So I would start with some local parent support groups perhaps that can guide you and advise you on quality behavior analysts in your area. You'll also probably need to find a licensed psychologist or an assessment center, because I think the way that the process, and then you might also benefit from finding a nutritionist or someone who can guide you with a dietary plan. So I think the process, the way that normally, this is how I would do it, let's put it this way. I would connect with the physician and start to get some assessments done, medical assessments done, so that I can make sure my child is medically stable. If there are any issues such as allergies or any toxicity issues or metabolic issues, your physician would be able to test for those things and then start treatment for those things. We sort of want to come into intensive ABA having a child who is, first of all, medically stable, sleeping well, and it's really important, I think, to know the things that are going on biochemically with our kids. A lot of the kids, as I've said many times on this show before, a lot of the kids have, let's say, fungal infections or are reacting to gluten in their food or those types of things. And when we eliminate those factors, the children start to learn much more rapidly. So I think it's kind of important to stabilize the medical health of the child and make sure the child is able to sleep well and be awake and functioning well, and there isn't anything else that we're not aware of medically. And so that's where also you might need to consult with a nutritionist or a dietitian, and if there is a diet to implement, then that's something I would start with as well. that's kind of difficult because you have to learn about the diet and you have to purchase the right foods and you have to make sure that the house is supportive of it, the rest of the household.
Yeah.
And then you will also want to connect with the psychologist to do a series of standardized testing. And that would be, you know, tests like intelligence testing, language testing, adaptive testing, that sort of thing, which are very important because they set sort of the baseline for where your child is starting, and they will help you measure progress every year by going back and looking at those tests. And then I would go to an ABA provider, and the ABA provider will start with what's called a functional analysis or assessment, functional behavior assessment, and that is sort of a form of an assessment that also identifies why problem behaviors could be happening, and then they will start to intervene with the problem behaviors. Now, it suddenly occurred to me that behavior analysts are all quite different from each other, and I would also really recommend that you spend a little bit of time online on our skills website, which is skillsforautism.com. And there you'll have access to a very, very unique assessment, which is the skills index or the skills assessment, and that's probably the most comprehensive assessment you're going to find anywhere. And it is very, very detailed questions about your child that you answer online. Of course, this is completely safe and confidential, and the information then goes to a database that then provides you with a list of all the age deficits, so age normed deficits that your child might have in all areas. So if your child is behind on language, it'll not only tell you how far behind, but it'll tell you exactly every concept in language that needs to be taught to catch your child up. And also in all other areas, social, cognitive, executive functioning, play, motor, etc., etc. So I think the skills index is extremely useful, the assessment tool. And of course, if you become a user on skills, you will then also be linked to curriculum and how to teach those areas of deficit. But it's absolutely optional. You could simply use the assessment tool and not the curriculum, or you could choose to be a regular member and use both. Or your professional, your BCBA or the behavior analyst working with you could use skills. You know, right now we have more behavior analysts using skills than parents. We have a tremendous number of behavior analysts using skills, and I think it just provides them a pretty good, step-by-step guideline on how to teach skills. And so then you have your medical and your dietary, child's sleep is stable, and you are doing appropriate behavior analysis. And I would then want to make sure that you would review for, this is very, very important that your behavior analyst do very regular sort of reviews. Here at CARD, we review with the parents every 2 weeks, and that is, I think it's pretty necessary. I mean, we could reduce it. A lot of funding agencies want us to reduce it, but I've kept it very high because it's a very important period of time. We call it the clinic, and it's the parent, the supervisor of the case, and all the therapists who are working with the child gathering, and if there's teachers involved or speech paths or OTs, then everybody comes together and we discuss all of these things and make sure that how the child's doing, what the progress is, what are our goals, do we need to make modifications, so that those types of things are critical. And having said that, depending on your child's needs, you may also want to consult with an OT, occupational therapist, so that you can get some sensory integration form of occupational therapy. This is if your child has sensory issues, which I find most of the kids do. And then finally, you may also want the assistance of a speech pathologist. At CARD, we sometimes have speech therapists working with us, and sometimes we don't, because we also have internal speech pathologists who work with our team of behavior analysts. But you do want to make sure that all areas are kind of progressing evenly together. And if there's an area that's falling behind the others, then you need to modify the program in some way.
Yeah.
That's a long answer.
It's a lot, and it can be very overwhelming, but I will tell you, as somebody who had a child diagnosed with autism and felt it was vastly different than it is now. I mean, that was 8 years ago, and so much has changed. But what has changed has been for the better.
Yes.
But I will tell you that it's still going to sound overwhelming, and you got a laundry list there that Dr. Granpeesheh just gave you. You will get through all of those things.
You will, yeah.
But you'll take a little bit of action, and then you'll have to wait on some of those things, and that gives you time to address one of the other things. I can remember that we had to go and get an assessment, and it was going to be 3 weeks away, and I thought that I was going to come out of my skin.
I know.
The writing was already on the wall for me. My husband was still in denial, and I thought, and I would say to everyone and anyone, what can I be doing in the meantime?
Right.
And people would give me little directions of things to do. I didn't have all the I couldn't go on skills back then.
Or
there
IBT.
wasn't IBT.
Right.
I mean, I think about what I would have done had I had that to do over again. But somebody did suggest to me that I look into diet. And I said, well, if that's all I can do right now, I'm all in, right?
Right.
And for my child, that ended up being a wonderful thing.
Exactly.
So by the time our ABA started, he was medically stable.
That's awesome.
I always say that, the diet made it possible. It cleaned him up so that he could learn, and then ABA started the process of teaching him how to learn.
Right.
And I don't know, for each child it's going to be different. And so it would be lovely if we could say, step 1, do exactly this. Step 2, do exactly that. It's going to be different depending on where you live.
Absolutely.
And different based on your child, but you'll be amazed at the strength you will find, because each little step along the way, you'll go, oh, okay, well, now I've got to wait a little bit. I'll focus on this.
Right.
So it won't quite be the avalanche that it seems like in this moment.
Yeah. And I don't want to overwhelm any parents, especially when you're at this point, because your child just got diagnosed and it's a pretty scary time. But I do, you have to imagine that 20 years ago, you'd be lost for the next 10 years. Nobody, and it's you really are kind of blessed to be in the situation that you are. You're hitting things very, very early. So you have to see the positive in that. And as Shannon, as you mentioned, one of the important things, I think, is that we freak ourselves out as parents. If you have to wait a week, and let me just say, you will have to wait a little bit, because the physicians who are trained to handle this sort of thing are very busy. There might not be one in your area, and you might go with your pediatrician, and your pediatrician might not be knowledgeable in any of these things that pertain to the treatment of ASD. So you'll want to be a little patient. You might also find a behavior analyst who you don't like and want to change. And so it's a process. It's if you find a doctor right away and a behavior analyst right away and a speech therapist right away, and they all are great, you're very lucky.
Buy a lottery ticket.
Buy a lottery ticket. Exactly. You're that lucky.
Yeah.
But don't be discouraged if you need to switch around a little bit. It's an evolving field, and people tend to, we're still cleaning up the field, let's put it that way. But I will say that in order to reduce your own anxiety a little bit while you're waiting for these things, do visit the IBT, the Institute for Behavioral Training website, and there you'll find a lot of training for you, for the parent. And I think the more we know, I know for myself or my children, if something happens, the first thing I do is start Googling, WebMD or here or there, what's going on. And I think IBT will provide you with a lot of information and training as a parent. Just go to the parent section, look up the various training modules. What is autism? What is ABA? How do I change behavior? How do I do this? Train yourself. The more you know, the easier it'll be to handle your child and to identify if you have a good or not so good behavior analyst. So, please spend the time to do that, because that will really it'll help you understand why it is possible for a lot of our children to actually recover. You get the overall picture of what the intention of ABA is. You'll get it much more comprehensive than just talking to a behavior analyst. So, that will definitely help as well. And don't be worried if you find a behavior analyst before you stabilize your child medically. even the first 6 months or so, you're going to be doing a lot of this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Back and forth and back and forth. There's a number of different websites that provide you a lot of information. Autism Research Institute is one of them. And there's a conference coming up in May for Autism One. There you can also, that's in Chicago, you can get a lot of information. I'm not very involved with the conference scene right now anymore. I was a couple of years ago, but you know, I'm sure you'll have a lot of resources, and these resources are way better than they were a few years ago.
Absolutely. But I have to say, one of the things that I'm really encouraged by this question, I mean, your child was diagnosed on Friday.
And here
you're asking questions. You found us, and you're asking good questions, and this parent is already seeing their child as a whole child.
Yes, it's beautiful. I love it.
And that's an amazing thing. That tells me that we're moving in the right direction.
That's absolutely right. You're already asking the right questions, and you're a step ahead.
Absolutely.
And get yourself some support.
Absolutely.
This is kind of a journey for a few years. It's a beautiful journey because you see your child learning something new every day. So it's kind of fun. It's a lot of fun in that sense, but it also, you really will need some support because it takes up a lot of your time and energy, and you tend to worry. And if your child has behaviors, it might be hard because you'll hear your child crying when the therapist is putting the child's behavior on extinction. So all this sort of stuff. So it is definitely increasing your stress for a little while. So be prepared and get your friends and families and so on to be there for you. But at the same time, I hope you're in a city where a card is, because I'd love to be able to take your 2.5-year-old.
There you go.
Love the little guy.
Absolutely. Okay, we had a question. Hello, Dr. Doreen and Shannon. We thank you and love you for all you do.
Oh, that's very nice.
Last week you mentioned that you had a client who would doodle on the air like as if writing something.
Right.
My child does that a lot, and we would like to know, what did you do to replace or to extinguish? I always like to know why she does that. She does this in public, and children look at her as if this is unusual. So I'd like to find something functional to replace. So we know that it's a girl, but we don't know an age.
Right, and that's okay. I mean, so what I did with this particular child was we shaped the period of time that he was allowed to doodle like that. And he would be constantly, constantly doing that. And so we shaped it and said, we started blocking it so that he wasn't allowed to do it except for certain periods of time, right? And so he wasn't, for instance, if it occurred during class, he was told, no, you can't do that right now, you just have to wait until your break.
Okay.
And so he started to actually do it. He started to, that took a little while, maybe a month or so, but his behavior started to shape, and because he had a therapist with him, he wasn't allowed, but then during break time, he was allowed. So obviously behavior will shape easily under those circumstances, and after a while you learn, oh, here they let me do it, there they don't. And his comprehension was at a point where we could actually make him understand that you need to wait. For instance, we used certain things like timers, or later on, just a bell, that little buzzer that would go off when the time was coming up, so that we could give him some indication of the time to the break, so that he could hold himself back from doing it. And then we realized that this is kind of a relief for him. It's a sensory it's an experience that he likes to do, but I didn't want him to even do it during break in this sense, because it made him look a little bit odd in front of other children. So his was numbers, and so I started to teach him Sudoku. Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yes, you are.
Right, and because he's a very intelligent little guy, he's only 6, but he loves Sudoku now, and so when he has the need to do it, he will go and pick up the Sudoku thing and start doing it, and that replaces his need. And so now it's a very, very normal, functional behavior, which looked extremely odd before. He didn't just do this, he would also count everything. For instance, he'd count all the stairs he was going up and down all day long. All day long, he'd count his steps, he'd count, items that were he just counted all day long. And this really just went away because we reduced the time frame it was allowed in, and then during that time frame we replaced it with a more appropriate or socially appropriate behavior. So I think that helps, and I think that's sort of gives you some ideas maybe of the type of things that you can do with this.
Absolutely. And so we wish you luck with that, and write us back and let us know what you do and how it goes. We're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back with more of Ask Dr. Doreen. Stick with us. Welcome back to Autism Live and to this segment, which we call Ask Dr. Doreen. Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is here with us, and she is answering your questions live, and you're flooding them in, so I'm going to get to as many of them as possible. But we also have a wonderful guest that we're going to bring in the next surprise guest. I hinted that we might yesterday, and I didn't want to give it away because we didn't know for sure, but we think we're having a surprise guest in the next segment, and you're just going to have to wait to find out. Okay, so somebody wrote in and said, "Hi, Dr. Doreen, when will cards start using the iPad for data collection?" This it's a parent who's saying this paperwork is taking too long out of the sessions. It takes about a half an hour of each session to collect data. If the kid has 3 sessions, that's an hour and a half a day from his hours away from therapy, and thank you. And of course, we know that data collection is essential, right? Your program is only as good as your data collection.
And sometimes I'm actually really amazed at my therapists. Honestly, the other day I was observing a couple of therapists on a case in Orange County, and I couldn't even believe it. They're just so good. They're so fluent in the process. You know, like this one she not only had, she was collecting data on a paper and then also had a tally for potty accidents, and then she had a token chart going at the same time, and I was like, good God. It's
the multitasking
Edward Scissorhands here, you know? We're piloting it right now. So the data set has been done. The software is built. It's all done. I think it's being piloted in 2 of our offices right now. I'm not sure which ones. We just want to make sure that the therapists become very fluent with it, and B, the data that's collected. See, the big transition for us on this one's pretty hard. You know, for parents will know that we've now had the iPads out there for over a year, which is tremendous for us and has helped us a lot. Although it's been ridiculously expensive as well.
Sure.
1,000 therapists with iPads. But having said that, the data collection is very different than everything else we've loaded onto the iPads and rolled out until now, because the data collection is, it's the meat of how we get your child's funding renewed. So, and trust me, funding agencies look at those data points. So I completely understand what you're saying in terms of it takes a while, but the issue is that there's so many different factors involved here. We want to make sure that when the data that we take shows the funding agencies that there is progress being made. And this is very important for ABA because sometimes the progress that's being made is not evident in a 6-month period, which is our funding renewal period usually. Because unless it's only evident if you look into the detail of what's going on. So for instance, I might introduce a lesson which has to do with, conversation. And by the end of the 6 months, there's not going to be any conversation. However, if you look into the actual lesson and you look at either the individual SDs that are taught, for instance, joining a conversation or starting a conversation appropriately or repairing a conversation, which are sort of some of the individual sections of a conversation lesson, there might be progress in one of those. Or if there isn't in one of those subsections, then there might be progress in the exact exemplars. And the exemplars would be, for instance, 5 different ways of joining a conversation, 5 different ways of introducing, and maybe 2 of the 5 are mastered. So it's very, very important for us to take that level of detail, because from insurance companies and most funding agencies, they come from a different perspective. They expect gross change. And it's very, very hard for them to realize that autism and ABA is something that is, small amounts of change building on top of each other for the course of 3 to 4 years. So that is the reason that this is critical, that your therapists take good data. Now, once the iPads come in, I am very hopeful that we'll be saving some time for the child and not taking as much, because the program actually calculates percentages on its own, and all you really have to do is touch a button when you're doing it. So it's pretty good. But I'm cautious about when I actually, because I can't have my therapist run 2 systems.
Right.
So I'm going to have to turn off use of the logbook and turn on use of the data on the iPad instantly, and it's a scary time, because once I do that, I'm really dependent on that data for your child's funding.
Yeah.
So I want to make sure everything is perfect on that software before I roll it out. But it's happening right now. So I would say a month or two, it'll be out there.
And the funding, I'm so glad that you remind us about the funding, because I think sometimes we don't think about that. But also keep in mind that that data helps all of you to decide what to do next in therapy to better make sure that the progress is happening.
Oh my gosh. I mean, we live by that data.
Yeah.
If I don't have data, sometimes I see other people's cases, other organizations, and when I have, logbooks that have narrative in them, I just close the logbook. It doesn't mean anything to me if a therapist, and especially when there's 4 or 5 therapists, writes their opinion about how the session went. It means absolutely nothing. Our stuff has to be data driven, otherwise it's just not valid.
Absolutely. Somebody else who's written in and said, love the show with 2 exclamation points.
That's nice.
My son is 8 and has been receiving 20 hours of ABA a week for 5 years.
Wow.
We have seen improvement in his behavior and language, but his echolalia is still strong. His mans are all I want, and then fill in the blank, with no variation. He scripts at high levels in all environments and has little spontaneous language. I don't want to give up on his language. Just keep working on it. Are there specific language programs we should be focusing on? I see so much potential in him, but his progress is very slow.
Right. I absolutely don't give up. That's the first thing. Don't give up. But I'm not 100% sure if you're with the right provider. So I just don't know. You could be, potentially, and otherwise you could also need a change. What I would do is go on and do the skills assessment and look at, and you can do this for free because you have a 2-week free period on there or something. So
yes, 14
go
days.
in, answer the questions about your child, and skills will then give you the program, the suggested lessons. Take a look at those lessons. There will be hundreds. Take a look at those lessons and see if they're pretty similar, or at least see if some of the ones that your provider is doing are in the lesson plan, in the treatment plan. In other words, does it correlate with skills? Skills has been published, validated, reliable measure, and it really is a good source to use in terms of just validating whether or not a provider is doing the right thing. We have insurance companies using it now to see if providers are doing the right thing. So I would really check that factor, because everything else could be slow, but with 5 years of ABA, I don't think you should be having echolalia right now. You could potentially have some out-of-context repetitive speech from, let's say, videos or something like that, but not immediate echolalia. So again, I can't give very specific advice in this case because I don't really know the characteristics of your child, but I would suggest you get another assessment, perhaps take a look at how the progress has been. Do not give up. You will ultimately find the key and start to, sometimes it's just a matter of fine-tuning some procedures. And once you've done that, your child picks up. Sometimes it's a matter of looking at your child's other factors like sleep and medical issues and dietary issues and so on, and then your child speeds up. Make sure at the same time, when things drag on this long, just make sure that your child's enjoying it, because it can get pretty aversive if you're going on and on and on and on for years and your child's not mastering. You always want to kind of have a situation where your child is mastering stuff. Even my most difficult children or most severely impacted children have mastered stuff within 6 months to a year. So you kind of need to make sure that's happening.
And our big topic for this entire year, we're talking about quality ABA therapy. It's our overriding arc this year, and because we're seeing more and more people write in, and they have fought so hard to get ABA. Right. But it's important that people know that all ABA is not the same. One of the things that we always say to parents here on the show is make sure that the person that you're working with is checking to make sure that there's progress. And one of the things I always say as a parent is ask them how you're working towards generalization. It concerns me as a parent that your child is saying, I want, and that is
nothing more.
And nothing more.
Yeah, and that's an easy teach. That's something very easy. So That's what made me actually question the quality of the ABA.
Yeah. And, I mean, it may be that they're attempting to teach it in different ways.
Absolutely.
But then if that's not working, then you still have to try other things.
Right.
So I want to caution you as one parent to another, make sure that you're getting quality ABA therapy.
Right.
Do whatever you have to do that. And I think that's the key to seeing the kind of progress that we all want to see.
And again, I will say that is predominantly what I do. I mean, not predominantly, but my clinical contact these days is limited to seeing families at CARD who have hit a plateau where I can help, or seeing families outside of CARD who need a second opinion, third opinion, and some advice on their ABA program, that sort of thing. So if you can get on my calendar and come to LA, I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
And also, I travel a lot, so if I'm in your area, I'm also happy to do that, and that's usually on our website as well, my travel schedule.
Absolutely. So what a great invitation. We are going to take another break, and when we come back, we have a very special guest, and we'll unveil when we come back. So stick with us. Welcome back to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Doreen. I mentioned that we had a very special guest, and so we're welcoming for the first time Dr. Steve Edelson. He is the executive director of the Autism Research Institute, or as a lot of us refer to it as ARI, an amazing, amazing organization. And you have a tremendous site that is so interactive that so many parents find so much hope in. We were just talking about that briefly during the break, but welcome to the show.
So nice to have you here.
It's nice to be here too.
And you're here on a brief little visit, so we coerced you. I will say
Shanghai is
there was a little bit of that. There was the bear trap out in the control room, and we caught him and brought him in. We twisted his arm, but I wondered if you could just talk to our viewers a little bit about what if they're new. Because we had one mom who wrote in and said her child was just diagnosed on Friday. Tell them a little bit about ARI and what the mission is.
Well, with Autism Research Institute, we were actually established in 1967 by Dr. Bernard Remland, who's one of the true pioneers in the field. He actually was the one who said it was not the mother's fault back in the 60s, because at that time, every professional, not one, they all said it's the mothers, and well, actually both parents, especially the mother who caused the autism. And then he wound up having a son with autism and read the literature. He had just finished his PhD in experimental psychology and realized that everyone was blaming him and his wife. And then he started writing a paper, which eventually grew into a book. And what's interesting, this year is the 50th anniversary of the book. Oh. So the Institute we're still figuring out different ways to celebrate Amazing. The book, but it's been 50 years and just quite incredible. So when he founded the Autism Research Institute, basically the main mission was to conduct research as well as sponsor research, which we continue today. But over time, the mission also included distribution of information to parents as well as professionals. So basically, we conduct and sponsor research as well as distribute information.
And it's incredible information. I know I've been able to go to a few ARI conferences and hear some of the people speak, and it's amazing what you can learn at one of your conferences and the ability to connect with other people. A lot of times, I know you have spoken at their conferences before. I
just want to say, ARI has contributed in so many other ways to this field overall. I mean, I would say the entire medical movement was what ARI started, and before that, I mean, I remember this very clearly, and you remember, of course, at 1995, I believe, right? The first STAN conference. Meeting. Yeah. So, and this was unheard of back then. And Dr. Rimland was bringing together physicians from all over the world to bring their thoughts and opinions and research together and discuss what is the real underlying medical cause or correlation to autism. That was a first, and that's now becoming mainstream.
Right. Well, for years before that, he was pressuring a lot of other autism organizations and researchers to look into medical problems, and as well as biomedical, they're almost the same as far as autism, and no one listened. And so we decided to put together a think tank, which we brought in some of the top researchers as well as experienced clinicians, and they all got in the room, and they all agreed that the immune system was a big issue. And there had been talk and some research in the previous 10 years on that issue. But as far as gastrointestinal, there's nothing in the literature. And one clinician after another said, I thought I was the only one who's seeing it. I'm also seeing it. And then they realized that GI problems were a major problem. It was right then everyone's eyes open and said, my God, it really is a big issue. And toward the end of the 3-day meeting, everyone in the room agreed, let's network, let's work together, let's try to have a movement to make medical problems, make the community aware of these medical problems, and then and after that figure out how best to treat them.
Right,
So
and then from that, of course, came the whole movement of training doctors and just, the entire dissemination. If you look at it now, of course, there's offshoots, which is sort of the MAPS group, but if it wasn't for ARI, none of this sort of stuff would have come together. Those very same
10 years
physicians,
later,
those same physicians have now trained thousands of other doctors in the country. So that's an amazing achievement.
It's important work. And now, I know I got an email yesterday. You've got a survey that you're asking parents to participate in. Tell us what the survey is going to determine.
Well, actually, I'd like to talk about 2 surveys.
Sure.
If that's okay.
Absolutely.
One that's already out there, we went out in November, is a survey to try to subtype autism. That is, in Dr. Remland's book that we talked about, that came out in '64, he had a checklist in the back to diagnose a form of autism called Kanner syndrome, or classical autism. And he wasn't too happy, but there were many parents who would rip it out of the book, fill it out, and mail it to him for his advice. But by having a lot of parents write to him, he realized that there were other things that should be added to the checklist. So he modified it a few years later, and he kept distributing it, translating to many different languages. And one of the goals, which we actually have on film from '68, says, someday I'd like that checklist to be used to see if there are types of autism. And so actually in the 90s, I started analyzing the data to look at subtypes, but then this Dan medical movement started, and so I had to put it aside. And about 3 or 4 years ago, a graduate student came to me who's actually in computer science, says, I know a lot about clustering, subtyping. Could I look at the data? So I had him come to the office, and he found roughly between 10 and 12 types of autism. Before putting that out, we need to see if we could replicate it. We have to be very careful because we want to make sure they're valid. And so we spent a couple of years adding more questions. Many of them are medically related: GI, immune, seizures, migraines, and so on. And then it went online in November. And our goal is to have roughly 3,000 respondents, if not more, by hopefully this summer.
That's great.
And we're now halfway. We're at 1,500. And just a couple of weeks ago, we went out with an Italian, French, and Spanish versions of the checklist.
That's
so
awesome.
That's going to encourage. So we're very excited. And if we do replicate, then I plan to bring in some of the top researchers in subtyping together to figure out how all our data fits together, because it has to make sense. And if we can find subtypes, figuring out the underlying cause and best treatment is going to be a lot easier for each subtype rather than taking a heterogeneous population and trying to figure out. And the other survey, which it's already IRB approved, it's already online, but it's not live because we're still testing. We're surveying medical problems in adults with autism.
Wow.
Because there is some indication that medical problems are more common in adults than children, and so our goal is to see if that's true, and then try to also relate it to some of the sensory issues, because there's a lot of talk about sensory issues being associated with medical problems. And actually there was a study, I think it was last year, that surveyed over 100 people and found that those who had GI problems were also more likely to have sensory problems. And my guess is that if you treat the medical problems associated with autism, many of the sensory problems will decrease or be eliminated.
It's interesting.
Is my guess.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to find out.
Important. So for our viewers, I'd like you to get to your 3,000 mark, and I'd like to get you to your 5,000 mark. So where can they go?
More the better.
Where can they go to be a part of that first survey that's already available?
Okay, it's an easy domain name, autismresearchsurvey.com.
Okay, autismresearchsurvey.com.
Correct. And if you complete it, you are in a contest to win an iPad. We do this every couple of months, as well as receive a 1-year subscription to our science newsletter.
That's great.
Really?
Yeah.
That's really
And they can also, I would encourage people to sign up to be on their mailing list as well, because you'll get information about webinars. You guys do some amazing, amazing webinars. They frequently conflict with our show, which I would love to see that change. But I don't get to watch them is my problem, because they're happening at the same time.
But they're archived on YouTube. Go to autismwebinars.com.
Okay.
But I should also mention, a lot of people don't realize that we have 6 or maybe 7 newsletters that we produce on a regular basis. We have a monthly, just about what we do at ARI, like the webinars, the surveys. We have one, so that's monthly. We have one called Clinical Research in Autism, and we have roughly 4,000 subscribers, and that's geared toward obstetrician, nurses, and pediatricians, and basically it lists peer-reviewed studies that are relevant to their practice.
That's great.
And then we also have an adult e-bulletin about adult issues written by adults on the spectrum. That's
awesome.
Quarterly. We also have a newsletter for those with autism who are deaf or hearing impaired and blind or visually impaired. So that comes out quarterly. We also have, it's called the Global Autism Collaboration. We support a program with over 120 nonprofits worldwide to provide them information and network them, and then there's a newsletter there every other month.
That's amazing.
And we have a science hard copy newsletter. And we also, right next to our institute, we have an art gallery, and sales from the art support the institute. And it's not a disability gallery, it's a real art gallery, and that's actually a weekly e-newsletter. So we've got quite a few newsletters going out there.
You've got a lot going on.
Wow, I can't believe I'm not on all of those. They're just so
I get one newsletter.
I get the monthly one too. I should really try to get on the other science ones. They sound so interesting.
Oh, they are. Well, this is one way to get the word out.
That's absolutely right. And so people can go and sign up for the newsletters that they want to get and take the survey. And when will the other survey be available?
The adult medical survey, I hope within 1 or 2 weeks. We'll probably announce it in our monthly newsletter.
Right.
And I haven't figured out the domain name yet for that.
Okay.
But if you go to autism.com, once it's out there, we'll mention it. And I hope to have 300 or 400 respondents by the summer. And I also have quite a few important meetings coming up over this year, and it'd be nice to start sharing that information with them.
Really incredible.
And the last little thing, because it's on my mind these days.
Sure.
I'm in about 2.5 weeks going to the Autism Research Institute is co-sponsoring a major autism conference in Moscow.
Oh, wow.
It's a 3-day. Last year we had roughly 400.
Wow.
We hope to have more. And then spend a week there. And we're also meeting with a lot of researchers in Russia. And after that, I'm going to the Ukraine for a week. I figured, I could still get in. I still can get in, because if it may be harder in the future, and if we could help them in any way, we're going to do it. So if I can get in there, I will.
That is absolutely amazing. Yeah. We had an opportunity to have some people on the show that were doing a documentary about autism in the Ukraine and to help us to understand what's going on there. But I will admit that we just watched the Olympics in Russia, and I don't have a strong sense of where autism is in Russia. Do you know yet, or that's part of the reason why you're going?
Working with a lot of people in Russia for the past few years. Actually, one of the reasons, it's a major country, and Dr. Remla and his family is from Eastern Europe, as well as my family. So in our hearts, so I figured, and we're helping other countries too quite a bit. But with Russia, ABA, there's not much going on, but we want much more. Actually, last year we had a one-day physician training course by Dr. Cindy Schneider, and she had 100 people attend a full day, and 60 were physicians, and the others were social workers, psychologists, and so on. So, yeah, we're trying to help them in quite a few different ways.
We should do some ABA ones together sometime.
Yeah, that would be great. So.
That's amazing.
Well, and I would be remiss. Here I am sitting across from the two of you, and you are two of the greatest minds in the field of autism, honestly, and you are in different areas.
Not so much. We went to the same program.
I went to UCLA together.
Yeah.
Well, I love the fact that you two are talking, but honestly, what we hear from a lot of people is that there's an ABA camp, and then there's a biomedical camp, and there's all these other camps.
Sure.
And parents aren't interested in that. We love it when you guys collaborate as you guys do.
Right.
And we hope to see more and more of that. Anything that you guys want to say about, we were saying earlier about how this parent is seeing the whole child, and we love people, professionals such as yourself, who look at our kids and see the whole child. What can we say to people to get more people to participate in that?
Well, I should mention last year was the 75th anniversary of Leo Kanner's first paper. And in his writings, as far as the future, he did recommend an integrative approach to autism.
And also, I mean, Steve and Bernie Rimland are psychologists, not physicians. And so, you know, the fact that they have brought the world of biomedical and medical interventions for autism to us and to everyone also indicates that, you know, we all have to kind of have open minds and look at the other side of things. I often tell behavior analysts, this is not a learned disorder. You know, you can't just think you're going to go in and do behavior analysis and reverse things. You have to make sure that whatever caused this to begin with is being stabilized and handled, so that the child is able to learn and progress. And so, you know, we've talked about this a lot. There's been a lot. We've always, whenever I used to speak at the DAN conferences, we'd always push that issue as well. It's really important to be open to the fact that you need to do medical interventions in most cases and behavior analysis in most cases, and you can't just tell parents. There are some organizations still, Steve, that will tell parents, we won't do behavioral treatment with you if you do medical.
Which is so disappointing to hear.
And it is very sad, but many behavior analysts are beginning to come on board. It has changed quite a bit, so...
Right. Well, if they could be neutral, I think they're pushing for evidence-based, but we're all aiming for evidence-based in every area, whether it's medical, behavioral, sensory.
Right.
we all want that evidence-based. So all the research out there, that's what we're aiming for. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed, because if we replicate the subtypes, and again, I don't know if we will, but fingers crossed.
Yeah.
But if we do, that might speed things up, because then it's going to be easy. Because if you do a big study with a heterogeneous population, you'll say, well, only 5 of the 20 improved greatly, but based on statistics, it's worthless, this treatment.
Right.
And that happens all the time, as you know.
Right.
But if they're divided up and say, well, we took those in subtype A and 80% improved, and all the other subtypes, no one did, well, this could be an intervention for subtype A. So that's where we're going. So it's just going to, I hope, make things a lot easier. But, you know, all the research is evidence-based, and it's a lot of work, it's a lot of time, and it's a lot of money, and we can't do that overnight. It's unfortunate, but we can't do it overnight.
One of the things that was explained to me, and tell me if I get this right, that somebody had said to me, imagine if we still just used the word cancer, and that we didn't have pancreatic cancer, and we didn't have liver cancer, and we didn't have breast cancer, and we didn't have small cell, fast-growing cancer, and we just treated it all the same like they did in the Dark Ages. You wouldn't be as effective at getting progress, at people getting back to health. And when I think of my son with autism, and one of his best friends also is on the autism spectrum, but they couldn't be more different in how they react to things.
Oh, I agree.
And when I think ahead to the future, if there was a day when somebody's child was diagnosed and we said it's subtype 34A, which means that we know best practice for that is you're going to do a gluten-free diet, you're going to get this many hours of ABA, and this will get us the best outcome. But for another child, it's something different, but significantly different, so that the outcome is different for them.
Right.
You got it.
That's so I'm correct in that. Okay.
And Steve, one of the things that you might be interested in is that we have some researchers at Chapman right now doing the pattern analysis on skills as well.
Oh, good.
And because it's been our goal for a long time as well to come up with some subtypes, and so perhaps we can cross-validate.
Yeah.
We can do a construct validity against each other and see how that works.
I'm a computer programmer and good statistics, and I wrote my own clustering program.
That's great.
And which I shared with someone from the University of Chicago, and goes, yeah, it should work.
Yeah.
So so I wrote it for the upcoming data, but yeah, it'd probably be.
That would
it's
be
very
another way to
simple and
validate
straightforward.
too.
Yeah.
It would be interesting. Yeah.
Is there anything you can't do?
Yeah.
Do you do dishes as well?
Oh, you
are
don't
you the
even know
perfect man?
some of the things that he does. Yeah, you don't know. Tell them about your books of poetry and so on.
Mike, you are the Renaissance man.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I write music, and I paint, and I write poetry, philosophical books, and things like that. So
Wow.
I do a lot of things.
He's a very interesting guy. Yeah, that's right.
You are the Renaissance man. Well, I'm thrilled that we had the opportunity to have you on the show and to have both of you together.
Oh, it's a
This has
pleasure.
been a
You can
thrill.
cross Steve off your list now. Because
You're on my bucket list.
Every couple of months, I'm like, did you get Steve Edelson yet? Did you get Steve Edelson? We mentioned it before.
I don't like to be interviewed very much.
Right,
So.
and I said that too.
Yeah.
And I have followed you around at conferences and said, now, and when you've been very busy and it wasn't appropriate, but I have trailed you for a while with different colored hair, different times. And of course, we're thrilled. So thank you so much for being willing to do it. And thank you, Dr. Granpeesheh, for being here.
Always.
We'll have you back on next week. For those of you who didn't get your questions answered, obviously you understand this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and but we will bank those for next week.